Dragon Ball New Hope is a what-if fan story that stands out amongst all other what-ifs because of how faithful to the source material the writing, art style, and characterization is. Diverging at the point of the Cell games by giving Cell the victory is nothing new, but the way that everything goes down feels very in character for Cell. Despite previously deciding to kill every human on Earth, having him decide to spare half of the population makes sense given that he can travel instantaneously whenever he pleases. It's a change of mindset that says, I can torture this population whenever I want. It's a sensible motivation with a weak execution because he just says he won't sully his perfection with Krillin's death after he was going to kill him anyways. There's also the problem with Cell saying he was going to destroy the Earth too. Reading the story more thoroughly and a little bit of discourse online regarding the subject, it becomes more clear that this threat is more of a motivator for the Z Fighters to fight him rather than something that he wants to do. Cell, while clearly not having qualms about killing people, has always wanted to achieve his perfect form first and foremost. Achieving his perfected state and testing those abilities is a key point of Cell's character, arguably being the main motivator of his character. He doesn't kill Vegeta, fights Trunks knowing he can beat him, waits for Goku, and tries his best to anger Gohan during their fight. Destroying the Earth is of no consequence, but it isn't something that he necessarily wants to do. As he says, it'll just cost him a little fun. There's also an immense pride in his newfound capabilities that is leveraged here after his defeat of Gohan, making him not kill Krillin but killing half the population. In a way, this can be viewed as Cell seeing him as just another human, allowing him to dwell in his weakness, which forces Krillin into a role he was never made for or necessarily wanted. He stands as a lone survivor, pushing him to do things he would never have thought himself doing, training Goten, the Earth's last hope, augmenting his body to that of an android's, and eventually being the last one standing against Cell. These actions were not something he could be seen doing ever, but his motivation is very like him. All of these things were in service of Goten, not himself, the most notable one being his android transformation. It was only for pushing Goten beyond his limits. The selflessness of Krillin's character is a symptom of his self-confidence and understanding. Seeing Saiyan's potential all his life, it's no wonder he'd leave the responsibility to one, and of course it was Goku's son at that. Krillin has never been able to take the main role. He's never had to be the hero, only the catalyst for others to grow stronger. He serves this role twice for Goku, where the main villain of the arc kills him or is too weak to contribute in a significant way, like he does against Cell and the Saiyans. These roles of supporter or catalyst makes him the perfect master because he is there to humble the prideful character of Goten. Goten's role in this story as the last or New Hope made him into a savior by default but a child first. He likes fighting and video games more than he enjoys studying, which is a nice way to fuse the two lifestyles of Gohan and Goku. His father, being a pure-blooded Saiyan, took a greater interest in fighting more than anything else. His brother wanted to be a scholar but had immense potential as a fighter, mixing both Saiyan's aptitude for battle and the modest goals familiar to Earthlings. For Goten though, he's fascinated with the prospect of fighting like his father while playing fighting games more times than not. Fighting is central to his character, identifying with Goku in looks and interests, real or not. His potential too matches Gohan's thanks to his ability to achieve Super Saiyan 2 at such a young age. This leads to some great growth from Chi-Chi, who acknowledges this fact, something she would have never done in canon. It's also hilarious that the Super Saiyan transformation was unlocked because Goten lost his video games. It's a typical Dragon Ball gag that works to great effect while holding up the Super Saiyan bargain sale line from Vegeta. Speaking of him, there's a one-to-one recreation of a panel from Vegeta's training with Trunks that says two things. The first is to establish a father-son relationship between Goten and Krillin, which informs a copied scene from Goku and Gohan coming out of the hyperbolic time chamber later. The second is saying that while the potential of these children is great, that does not mean they can defeat an experienced opponent. His battle against Cell is a clear example of this fact. Cell is a different beast on every level when it comes to anything the series has seen before in canon. His power eclipses that of Frieza's, his aggression surpasses that of Vegeta's, and his hand-to-hand skills are equal to Goku's if not superior. The fact Goten could keep pace with him for as long as he did is a testament to his potential, but the turnaround in this fight tells us that this story was never about him. It was about Krillin. Up to this point, the story has never empowered him, made him out to be the secret best the world has to offer, or given him a journey where he grows to the strength of Goku. This story was about him saving the world in the best way he knew how. He's effectively lost all of his friends, and his job as a final Earthling whose strength is worth its weight in gold is to defend the Earth. Krillin couldn't deflect this responsibility on someone else, and he couldn't run away like he used to. No waiting, only action. Krillin's final moments in this story run parallel to the actions many of his allies have taken throughout the years, training Goku's son, like Piccolo, relying on the next generation to face the Earth's greatest threat, like Goku, using the Kikoho at death's door, like Tien. Pieces of his final sacrifice that make it a true send-off to those who died in protection of Earth and himself. This section of the story is Krillin's take for himself more than anyone else. What's more, his apology to Goten for leaving him the past generation's mistake is overwritten because he's the one to defeat Cell. Despite all the time spent with Goten and Krillin's focus on him, he was never supposed to be the main character. This wasn't his story. He didn't have anything to redeem. He could never take a role he wasn't made for, but his mentor could. This story isn't about redemption or the next generation. It's about the aftermath of Cell's victory and the Earth's last hope against him. After the death of Trunks in the main timeline, everything is left to Bulma, and this makes things much more ironic for her than anyone else. Thrusting the responsibility of saving the world on a kid Gohan and then onto Trunks at the same age makes for a compelling setup because we can understand the hopelessness they must have felt in their positions. The fate of the world resting on the shoulders of children against seemingly unbeatable enemies who have beaten the Earth's greatest defenders communicates that quite effectively. The sense of irony comes in from one super genius scientist undoing the actions of another. That idea is really interesting, but I'm distracted by the fact Bulma has 10 years worth of fuel for the spaceship. I mean, come on, 10 years worth of fuel and food in a post-apocalyptic world. Even with Capsule Corp tech, it's not very convincing. Nevertheless, her efforts to find new Namek caused the return of Future Gohan to a destroyed Earth, bringing with him the arrival of Future Perfect Cell. This face-off makes the most sense because it's an indirect way for Gohan to win the fight he should have in the first place. Future Gohan being trained by Goku and Piccolo in the afterlife naturally gave him the boost he needed to handle Cell, but him holding back in any way before destroying Cell feels more of a nod to the audience than anything else. Future Gohan has never given off the vibe of testing the strength of my opponents, so masking this with him not having recovered his reflexes feels disingenuous to the character. Granted, this could contribute to why he didn't defeat Cell so quickly. Overall though, this fight is pretty good. The failings of the main timeline Gohan being made up for his future timeline counterpart falls in line with the success of unlikely heroes motif started by Krillin. The ending of this fight is kind of a victory lap for Gohan. Android 17 is spat out begging for his life, undermining his own crimes against humanity, and it's as pathetic and ignorant as it sounds. Obviously, Future Gohan kills the android without hesitation, ending their threat to Earth for good. After this, there's a flashback story of Gohan and Piccolo fighting Janemba that sets up Gohan to face the androids. By standing against the incarnate of evil, he was prepared for the other evils he'd have to face when he was revived. So for Goku to come and save him in his time of need makes this moment feel like the world is righting its wrongs. With all the time in the world for Goku to train as much as he'd like, and thanks to heaven he could spend as much time with his grandpa after he lost him all those years ago, he could become the fighter he'd always wanted to be and defend his loved ones. This section of the story is about the return of heroes and righting the wrongs done to those heroes. Gohan was able to save the Earth and Goku was able to train Gohan to do it. Unlike the main timeline, the future is about redeeming heroes who couldn't be what or where they needed to be when it mattered most. This story is still ongoing, but with the great writing, characterization, storytelling on display already, it makes whatever is to happen next highly anticipated. I'll leave a link in the description below where you can read this story in full, but as always, I thank you all so much for watching. Please stay safe out there and have yourselves a damn good one. I'll see you all next time.